Welcome to Angling Buzz presented by Fleet Farm. I'm Troy Linder. Well, it's late June, and right now it's prime time for river fishing across the upper Midwest for a variety of different reasons. Number one would be the low, stable flows of the rivers. Most of the rivers are also running fairly clear. Number two is it puts fish in fairly identifiable areas in the river. And this time of year, and most of the time of the year, current is king. And my favorite fish to target would be smallmouth bass, especially on topwater and across flats. It's very visual and very explosive action. Today's guest is Captain Ben Wolfe of Sportfish, Michigan, who fishes for a lot of different species of fish in the rivers over there. Ben, what are some aspects of river fishing this time of year that you can share with us?
Troy, I'm with you on the smallmouth on topwater. That's just one of the most explosive and fun, addictive things to do. Just one of my favorites for sure. For us, one of the most important aspects of river fishing actually is why. Why are they there? Understanding, are they a migratory species, like some of our salmon and steelhead, or walleyes that are coming in out of the main lakes to spawn in the rivers, or are they residents year-round? Understanding why they're there really will help pinpoint where to fish them, because that makes them more predictable in terms of where they're going and why they're going there. If they're there, for instance, only to spawn, they're going to use a river differently than if they're there as a resident. So a walleye or a salmon or steelhead that come in there to spawn, they're going to maybe feed in very short windows, or if at all. In the case of a salmon, their digestive tract is actually shut down, so they're not feeding at all. And when we fish for those, it's a provocation strike. But for something like a walleye or a steelhead, they do feed, but maybe in shorter windows. Now, in contrast, resident fish, they tend to be more aggressive because they have to fight the current, and they're expending a lot more energy. And as anglers, that current, really makes them more predictable, gives them into that feed or starve mentality, which is great for us as anglers to try and target them. Aggressive fish, who doesn't like them?
Yes, and I know you fish for a lot of different fish out there in the rivers. We're talking salmon, trout, walleye, bass, even catfish. Ben, what can you tell us about current and how fish are positioned in the current and where they feed?
That's a great question, and understanding current is key. Fish will utilize different parts of the river and different characteristics of a river at different times based on whether they're active in feeding or whether they're inactive, or water temperature as well. Things like deep pools, river bends, eddies, a seam in a river, those are all critical aspects of things that fish will utilize. Right now, I would focus on the flats, because those shallower flats are going to have more oxygen. That oxygen in turn is going to have more life and more feeding opportunities for those fish. So when they're active, they're going to get up onto those flats and just kind of cruise around and roam looking for fish.
And what exact types of spots and cover are you looking for?
Well, different species utilize cover differently, but in general, things like log jams, deep pools, those feeding lanes, seams, and those shallower flats that we talked about are all going to be critical areas. Active fish in general tend to be on top of a break or on top of the flats, in front of a log jam or a boulder, and the inactive fish are going to be behind those things. And that's really critical to look for those active fish in those areas before you start looking in the inactive fish behind those current breaks.
Oh boy, that's a storm.
That sounded good.
And another aspect of river fishing that is so exciting is the visual aspect. Not only can we oftentimes see the strikes and see fish following, and that's always exciting, but oftentimes, when we're looking for those current breaks and those other types of covers and areas that those fish are going to be feeding in, that's visual as well, and being able to understand where to cast. For instance, in a river system, typically we want to cast upstream or sideways to the boat or the bank and let the current kind of sweep that presentation down naturally. That's how those fish are going to be, feeding. They're always going to be facing into the current, and bringing a bait in front of them so that they can see it coming at them, that's going to be much more natural than coming up from behind them.
Well, that's a lot of great information about river fishing. I saw that video you did with my cousin James last fall, fishing and catching giant flathead catfish. That looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, what those a riot, absolutely.
That's a fish.
And the size of those things really gets your attention, as well as the blood pumping, for sure. We have here in Michigan such fantastic river options all across the state. We really do, and for a huge variety of species, we're really blessed that way.
Now that's what I call a beast.
And you know, in the next couple of months, we're looking forward to king salmon and coho salmon staging outside the river mouths, and you know, we'll push up into the rivers, and there's some more exciting opportunities right there.
Thanks, Ben. When we come back after this short break, we have more hot river fishing opportunities across the upper Midwest as Angling Buzz continues.
Sportfish Michigan is your #1 source for top charter captains and fishing guides in Michigan. Our network of professionals are full-time anglers with years of experience providing customers with the best possible fishing trip services. Fish for trout, salmon, steelhead on Lake Michigan or its famous tributary rivers, the Traverse City area's world-class smallmouth bass, walleye fishing on the Detroit River and Saginaw Bay, or northern Michigan's spectacular ice fishing. We do it all. Sportfish Michigan. Get out. Get bit.
Welcome back to Angling Buzz. And coming up next, we have our Timely Topics feature. We're heading over to Michigan, where we join James Linder and Chad Dilts for some seasonal river fishing options.
Well, we got actually a pretty good morning. We had, what did we have? One king, a really nice fat brown, couple of coho. It's been a really nice morning. Right now I'm fishing with Chad Dilts with Sportfish Michigan. And what Chad does is targets a lot of their stream fishing for cold water species. And he's going to give us a little rundown on what those guys do throughout the course of the season.
As far as our cold water species season goes, you know, we're here in November, and then we lead into, you know, December and late season steelhead, great trout fishing for both the conventional gear angler and the fly angler. And then once we're done with ice, just about time ice is out, we're ready to get after the steelhead for the spring run, you know, whatever fish have held over and whatever fish are coming in for the spring run. And that's in, you know, February, March, and April's really a bang up month for everybody around here to target steelhead, both for guides to guide and, you know, bank anglers and other people that are just fun fishing in boats to take advantage of good fishing. So we do target the salmon species, the king salmon and the coho salmon, all through August and September. You know, once things start winding down on the big lake. We do cater to whoever would like to fish for, you know, the resident trout population, both in May and June and even in July. But you know, we spend a lot of time out on the lakes chasing bass that time of the year. But we do like to let people know that we do have guides in our area that can offer both fly and conventional gear guide trips for those trout, both in, you know, June and July. We have some great river systems, you know, some small tributaries and some even bigger, faster moving, cooler ones. You know, if you want to guide on foot, if you wanted a guided trip on foot, or if you'd like to go in a drift boat, we can also cater to those people as well.
If you're looking for a captain or guide in the state of Michigan, give us a call or check us out on the web at sportfishmichigan.com.